Hey everyone, this is Stel AFT with Close.io, and in today's video I'm going to talk about how to conduct an effective sales meeting. Alright, so somebody recently asked me, hey Stelly, how do I make sure that our sales meetings are as effective as possible? Because honestly right now it feels like they suck. So we had a longer conversation. There were some very specific things that were contextual that made that sales team suffer and struggle through sales meetings that weren't as great. But I thought that I wanted to share some of my philosophies and general thoughts and ideas here with you and hopefully help you bring up your sales meeting game in general. So very few, very basic principles that I follow when it comes to designing a sales meeting. So first of all, make sure that you are very clear on what the purpose and goals of that meeting is, right? There's multiple different types of meetings that you could have. You can have a meeting in order to get everybody on the same page on something big that's strategic. So it's more about making sure that everybody understands why there's a shift in the business or why there's a big campaign that we're going to roll out. You can have a meeting more frequently, a meeting in order to just get everybody on the same page in terms of performance, right? Have the entire team share their numbers. How many deals have they closed? What are the deals that are in the pipeline? What's going on? What's going to happen? What has happened? Just making sure everybody's on the same page on progress of things and reporting the basic numbers. You can have a goal in a meeting to motivate and inspire, right? And make sure that the team is pumped up just before they hit the phone, so just before they get into their day, that you created some new level of clarity and inspiration and motivation to get them going. You can have meetings in order to discuss difficulties, things that are not going well, things that need a decision or a discussion, something that's wrong about the culture in the team, something that's wrong about the workflow in a certain part of the team. There's many different reasons to have a sales meeting, many different types of sales meetings, and you need to know what you're trying to accomplish in any given meeting. And some meetings will have 2 or 3 purposes. Some meetings will only have 1, but you never want to have more than 3. That's my basic principle. The best meetings are the meetings that have a singular purpose. If the meeting has 2 purposes, that's fine. 3 is stretching it. Everything above 3 and it's just too much. It's going to be too long. It's going to be too complicated. At the end, people won't remember what the first thing is that was discussed and decided around, and people are going to feel overwhelmed, which brings me to my next basic principle in terms of effective sales meetings, which is make them as sharp and short as possible and make as few of them as possible, depending on the design of those meetings, right? So a lot of sales team have kickoff meetings at the beginning of the day just to get everybody pumped, everybody excited, everybody create clarity for everyone. What do they need to accomplish this day? What do they need to get done? And get everybody in a peak state before they go on into their day to go get that. That's a meeting you can have every single day, but that's a meeting that can be 10 minutes long. That's not a 30-minute meeting. That is definitely not a 60-minute meeting, right? So if you have a meeting that's very frequent every single day, make sure they're very short, very sharp, very focused. If you have something that's a bit longer, ask yourself, why are we, you should do the math and really just think about, like, if your entire sales team, 20 sales reps sit in a room for an hour, what is the amount of revenue they could be generating? What is the amount of salary you're paying them? What is the real cost in that meeting? And usually it's astronomical. So it really needs to be worth those 60 minutes. Whatever you're discussing or deciding in that meeting better be worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if not, it's probably not the best use of time. So make sure that frequent meetings that are much more focused on kind of just getting everybody on the same page and get going, those are super short, 5, 10, 15 minutes max. Meetings that have a more complicated agenda, maybe discussing a problem on the team, deciding a certain direction, fixing something that's not working, that just needs a little bit of deliberation and discussion. Make sure that these meetings are scheduled for 30, 40 minutes max. I wouldn't even go for a full 60 minutes, and make sure that you give people an agenda before you have these meetings so that people can prepare, people can research, you have done your homework and your research, so when you sit down for those 30 minutes, everybody's on the same page, people know what the problem is, people have done their math, done their homework, done their research, they have ideas, they have facts, they have figures, and now we can get down to business with the end goal of making a decision versus starting the meeting by even figuring out what is the problem by even catching everybody up. And then you're like, well, this person's like, I don't think this is true. And you're like, well, I think it is true. Well, let's look at the numbers. And you're all sitting there looking at a laptop while somebody's logging into some database or to their Close.io account to look at their pipeline or revenue or some other reports of facts and figures. That's a huge waste of time. That's not productive. Make sure that before you enter a meeting, if it's a discussion or debate, something that needs a decision, that you've sent out an agenda ahead of time, that you talk to the key decision makers ahead of time, given people time to think about and marinate on the problem, to do their research, their fact-finding, go out on their fact-finding missions, and when they all come together, there's only one goal, which is to figure out a solution or decide on a course of action by the end of the meeting, and 30, 40 minutes should be more than enough, right? So those are the first two principles when it comes to like how to be effective in the sales meetings that you have. Here is something that typically works really well in terms of structuring a meeting in itself. Typically a very basic proven structure to have an effective meeting. So start off by catching up. And catching up meaning, here's what we discussed last time in this type of a meeting. This is what we discussed yesterday at the kickoff meeting, or how we ended the kickoff meeting yesterday. And this is how we are starting today. The reason for that is that when people come into these meetings, they come from all kinds of different walks of life, different types of situations, states of minds. One person's, just walking in from, grabbing breakfast. The other person just had a fight with their girlfriend or boyfriend on the phone while they're walking in. The other person just woke up 5 minutes ago, was running to the meeting. There's like, everybody is coming from a totally different point of view, and when they enter the meeting, when the meeting starts, you need to give people a chance to arrive, not just with their body, but also with their mind. The best way to do that is to start with the way you ended last time, catching them up. Hey, yesterday in the kickoff meeting, we said we need to do A, B, and C, and we said that would be the way we're gonna get going and make that day special. So as a reminder, these were our key 3 priorities, right? Yesterday. All right, let's go through the entire team and have everybody just give a sentence or two on what they did yesterday to accomplish these things. So you start by catching people up on what happened in the past meeting, and also give people a chance to be there and be present, which means, give them a second to sit down, make sure that everybody has eye contact. Another rule, a principle I'll throw out there is no laptops, no phones. Like, everybody needs to be present with their mind, not just with their body. And if people need to look up numbers, you need to give them the homework to look these numbers up before the meeting. Everybody should have their numbers and the key things they want to share with the team printed out or written out on a piece of paper, so they don't have to be online. When they're online, when they're looking at the phone or they're looking at their laptop, even if they're looking at a dashboard or they're looking at Close.io and looking at these numbers, there's notifications popping up, there's somebody flirting with them on Facebook or somewhere else. There's just distractions everywhere. It's loud, it's noisy, it's not going to allow them to be really hyper laser focused on the meeting. So no laptops, no phones. If you need numbers and figures, people need to have the mandate to bring these with them into the meeting in physical format. Coming back to it, you catch up at the beginning, right? What was it that we said yesterday or last time? If it was a discussion, what was, last time we talked about this topic, here's how we ended the meeting. We made this decision. We said this would be the action plan. So this is kind of the catch up from last time. Let's quickly look into the second step or the second part of the meeting, which is then giving an update, like allowing people to say, here's what we said we would do, or we said we would decide. What has happened since then? And then allow people to report on their numbers. Here's what I accomplished. Here's the deals closed, the calls made, the emails sent, the prospects qualified, the revenue generated, whatever the key KPIs are that people have to share. Okay, here was what we said and what was the goal last time. Here's what everybody has accomplished and where we are right now. And now a call to action at the end. What do we need to do to keep going really strong if things are going well? What do we need to do to course correct if things are not going well? What do we need to change if things are going catastrophic? And usually you don't want to have these catastrophic discussions of things that are like really like we need everything to change or we need some significant change to happen. You don't want to have these discussions happen ad hoc. This needs to be scheduled. So if numbers and everything, the direction goes in a really, really bad direction, you want to have a separate meeting to really make course corrections that are dramatic. In these update meetings, you want to keep things short and sharp and everybody just say, this is what we said yesterday. Everybody quick, boom, 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 give me an update on what the numbers are that you've accomplished, and here's what we need to do today, either to do better if we're not on course, or to keep the course going. Usually, so the start you catch up with what happened last time, in the middle you give an update, what you said last time, in the middle you give an update, and at the end you give direction on what needs to happen today or moving forward in order to accomplish the overall goal. And you wanna, if it's an update meeting, something that's frequent, a sales kickoff in the morning, for instance, you wanna make sure that you end it on a motivational, inspirational note, right? You can be critical in the middle, but at the end, make sure people are pumped. Sales is such a performance art, it's such a performance sport that people need to be in peak state to perform at their best. And they need to be reminded every single day why they're inspired, why they're motivated, why they're going through the highs and lows of the sales challenges, why they're selling this product and service to customers, why they're making a difference, why they have to take risks. They need to be inspired. They need to be, their internal passion needs to be kind of rekindled every single day. So make sure that at the end of the meetings, you end on a positive note. If you want to have a real effective sales meeting, you want people to walk out of the meeting with a passion, a drive, and energy to go and get things done and accomplish things and overcome things, and not with a depressing, defeated attitude that things are horrible and they're overwhelmed and they're not sure what to do, and things are really not going well, or they're not really sure how to accomplish what they need to accomplish. If they walk out of your meeting with that kind of a sense, it's going to translate in everything they do, which usually will translate into really bad results. Let's get to the other point. I mentioned this earlier in the principle, like keep it focused, but it's really important that people don't walk out of a meeting with a feeling of being overwhelmed, which is usually the case when meetings have too many topics, too many things, are too long, and people feel just overwhelmed and lacking complete clarity on what was all this about? What have we decided now? Why did I spend 60 minutes in this? When they walk out, all they want to do is kind of like decompress. They're not thinking about work. They're not inspired to snap into action, and they're really demotivated. So make sure that your meetings, you can take a temperature on that. When you end the meeting, is everybody jumping up with a snap in their step? Really like with intense energy, with smiles on their face, with like a drive to get to action? Or is everybody kind of like half asleep, stepping up, walking slowly, going to the kitchen to grab a coffee or a little snack, chit-chatting at the water cooler? Can you feel that? Is there a drive to action, or is there a drive to kind of, you know, take a vacation from that meeting and kind of find their strength again because they're so tired and overwhelmed and depressed and tired and whatever from that meeting? So just keep a temperature on that, keep an eye on that. Make sure, one other thing that can make sales meetings really ineffective is when there's nobody that is really emceeing it. And I know if you're the sales manager or sales leader, you think that you're managing and emceeing the event, but I see this all the time where the person that's leading the meeting is doing a terrible job actually emceeing the event, which means that you have the responsibility to keep the time, you have the responsibility to keep the conversation on track, focused, targeted, and if it derails, if somebody brings up something, even if it's a brilliant point, and it starts a conversation or a discussion or a debate, and it goes into a totally different direction than what you had planned for the meeting, what was on the agenda, what everybody expected in that conversation. Even if it's an important discussion to have, you need to make the decision if you really want to have an ad hoc discussion that might take 20, 30 minutes, that will lack focus, lack facts, lack clarity, and that maybe not everybody in that room needs to be part of, and maybe that meeting is not the best format to have this discussion right now. So one of the core jobs that you have as running the meeting is to stop these kind of derailing conversations and bring them back on the line, on what was focused on the agenda. And if it's really important to schedule a time and a follow-up to have that debate, have that discussion, make that decision, but making sure that you stay on time and it doesn't turn a 10-minute meeting into a 30-minute or 40-minute meeting because somebody brought up a really critical point, and then everybody had their opinions, and then people had opposing opinions, and then there were arguments, and then there were like back and forth. You're just sitting there. You were running the meeting. You were the manager of it, but you just sit there silently and you just observe all this craziness going on, all these discussions and back and forth. After just a minute or so, you need to make the snap decision. Is this part of this? Can we make a final decision within the time that we have? Is this really productive right now? Is this too ad hoc? Was this part of the agenda? And if it isn't, you need to step in and say, sorry guys that I'm interrupting. I think this is really important. If it is, if it's stupid, you tell them this is stupid, shut the fuck up, let's get back to work, and pick the people that had these arguments to have a conversation about this separately. But if it's a good debate or a good discussion or an argument, you step in, you say, this is a really good point, really important. I'm glad you guys brought it up. Now is not the time to discuss and decide this. But after this meeting, I'll make sure that we have something on the calendar with the appropriate people, and we'll sit down, we'll make a decision, and we'll figure this out. Not now, let's get back to the agenda. So you need to step in and interrupt stupidity, interrupt interruptions and discussions that derail and go into totally different directions than what honestly the focus of the goal was of the meeting in the first place. Make sure that your meetings don't end open. Any kind of sales meeting should have a high degree of clarity and a real call to action, a real action plan at the end of it. So when you have discussions or debates, never ever ever end the meeting with the decision that you haven't made a decision yet and you need more time to think about it, or you need to schedule more meetings. Really, no matter how complicated the problem is, no matter how much you think you need more time, you don't need more time. If you gave people an agenda and enough time to do homework, to think through things, to marinate on ideas, and then you sit down for 30, 40 minutes and you have a discussion, a focused discussion with the people that are really relevant and have the knowledge and the power to make a decision. And after that time you can't make a decision, more time will not lead to a decision. You're indecisive. You need to become more decisive. You don't need more time for a decision. And if there's not enough data to make the perfect or right decision, then you'll have to learn to make decisions with imperfect data, which is what most startups and most leaders have to do every single day. So you have to make a call. Make sure that your meetings never end without a decision. That's the most devastating thing that can happen in a meeting. We sit down, we talk for 30, 40 minutes, and we end it with that feeling of, yeah, we still don't know what to do. And I have a call, and the other guy goes, well, yeah, I have a meeting, I have to leave. Well, let's think about this some more and let's meet again next week. That sucks. That just means you ran a failure of a meeting. Make sure that you keep things on track, keep people focused, and that you are and act decisive. When in doubt, pick one, execute on it, come back next week or in 2 weeks and evaluate if that was the right decision or not, because you now generated more information, more data to hopefully make better decisions or make course corrections. But never, ever, ever end a meeting without a final decision on what needs to happen next. And then, last but not least, if you can, have a little bit of fun. I know that most of this video was pretty intense of me going, boom, 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 it needs to be focused, needs to be that, needs to be this, don't do this, don't this. But if you can have a little bit of fun, like sales job is really tough. I'm not really the greatest at this, just in all honesty, but I've seen this many, many times successfully implemented in sales teams where they might have, and we did this, just to be fair to myself, we had sales meetings where whenever the person that had to give an update, we had a little trampoline in the office and we'd have the person jump on the trampoline while giving their update, their numbers to the entire team, or while doing mock calls, or while pumping each other up and giving a little motivational speech. It's just a fun fact. It puts you in a different state of mind, different physical state. It's hard to jump on a trampoline and be depressed, almost impossible. So it can be that you incorporate something like that, a physical activity, jumping on a trampoline. I know sales teams that start maybe their meeting with a 2-minute kind of cardio body workout exercise, and they do a bunch of jumps and push-ups and sit-ups and a bunch of things. And when they're all sweating and pumped and laughing and kind of the blood is flowing through your system, now let's talk about business and let's get decisions done, right? So doing that, doing a little bit of an exercise, jumping on a trampoline, maybe dressing up, maybe once a week on Wednesday, the meeting, everybody shows up in their pajamas, or you do something else that's just quirky, funny, whatever is right for your culture. I know a team that every second morning sales kickoff meeting, they would make tiny little fun bets, right? So they would come up with a little bet for a bet of the day. And the bet of the day could be who's going to be the person that's going to, so the bet of the day is whoever gets to be able to make calls and have meetings and send emails while having their left hand touch their screen, the front of their screen. Whoever gets to do that for the longest period of time without an interruption wins whatever, tickets to a basketball game, or just wins some other funny little prize. And so you have a whole sales team of 60 people and everybody's like touching their screen while they're making calls and doing this and that, and then seeing who's going to be the person that survives that the longest. Or making any kind of other bet between the sales teams. Who's going to be the first person that makes the first 30 calls? Who's the first person that closes a deal today? Whatever it is. Just having some fun, making some bets between each other, sometimes playing music while you're having these updates, some fun music, some motivational music, some music that can pump people up, the Eye of the Tiger, whatever the hell makes you motivated in your team, can be fun just to mix things up. Standing can be a really good idea, right? You don't want to sit down. Sit down will make things more comfortable, will make people more comfortable with just going on for longer because it's not tiring. And it's just a different energy. Standing, you'll have a different energy than when everybody sits. People put their feet on their desk. People get a little tired, right? So people standing, people jumping on trampolines, people wearing funny hats, people making bets, people playing music, anything and everything that shakes things up and creates a little bit of fun and quirkiness can just make the meetings a bit more fun, something to look forward to, something that is kind of something that puts a smile on people's face. It's not usually what you hear when it comes to sales meetings. So you want to be different and you want to create that kind of atmosphere to really be effective. All right, I hope that these ideas were useful and helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your ideas and what you've seen work really effectively in order to have the best sales meetings possible. Just leave your comments below the video and make sure to go to blog.close.io and subscribe to our blog 2 to 3 times a week. We post highly actionable and tactical sales knowledge and entrepreneurial knowledge. And if you ever want to reach out to me personally, just shoot me an email at stelly@close.io and share your thoughts, ask your questions. Always happy to hear from you guys. That's it. Let's go get them.